Hello and welcome back to Rams Talk, the preview show. Well, I hope everyone has recovered from Saturday. I can't say I have just yet. I feel I've still got a bit of a headache and celebrated a bit too much on Saturday night, maybe a bit prematurely. We've still got lots of football to play. And this Saturday, we visit Northampton Town. I'm joined by Charles from It's All Cobblers to Me to talk about the game. How are you, Charles?
Yeah, I'm good, Jamie. Thanks, mate. Yeah, you well?
I'm very well. Yeah, apart from maybe celebrating a bit prematurely, it was a big win for us on Saturday, as you probably
Yeah.
know. And yeah, I think the alcohol was quite tasty on Saturday. But like I said, there we've got lots of football to play, and we've got some keen competition at the top end of the table. So looking forward to Saturday. We were just chatting off air briefly about your season so far, and I mean, what an achievement to consolidate on the first season in League One. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, if you go back to the very beginning of the season, well, before a ball has even been kicked, we basically got written off by pretty much everybody. I think the only sort of lower league pundits that had us finishing outside of the relegation zone were not the top 20 guys. Everybody else put us firmly in the bottom four, couldn't see us doing anything. And I remember feeling like it was a bit unfair because we changed from the last time we were in League One. That was the COVID season. Keith Curle was our manager. It was very Route One, horrible agricultural football. And we deserved to go down that season because of that. And I think for some reason, everybody just thought, well, that's how they play and that's, their DNA or something. And it's really not anymore. It wasn't really even that before that season. I think it was a case of with COVID and the financial strains that brought, it meant that we could only really go and sign players and weren't going to go and try and make them play pretty football because it just probably wasn't going to work. Whereas now, different manager under John Brady, who came in tail end of that last League One season that we had, got us playing football for the last few games. And actually, if you look at his record from those few games that he was in charge, we were very lucky to actually end up going down in the end. We could have escaped it if we'd have had maybe one or two more games. So we have changed a lot. And I mean, we've already played yourselves this season. You'll probably remember that game at Pride Park for very happy reasons for you guys. We try and play football. It's not just about being as direct as possible and just lumping it clear. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of that at times, but I'm sure Derby have to do that at times too. Probably not as often as we do, but it will still happen. But we now try and get the ball down. We play it on the deck. We pass the ball around. And it's worked really, really well and probably been the most attractive Northampton Town side that I've actually witnessed in my 30-odd years of supporting the team. So for the season to go the way it's gone, overall, I'm ecstatic with it. I predicted a 16th place finish at the start of the year. To be sort of, where were we, 11th, 12th before the weekend just gone. I was not dreaming of the playoffs. I mean, that did happen at one point, I won't lie. But I was, and I still am dreaming of that top 10 finish. It would be amazing for us to go in there and finish in the top 10. Even the top half would do me. If we finished 12th and above, then I would be raving about what a great season it's been. We've had those games where, a bit like that game at Pride Park, where we lost heavily, and we do that on occasion. Our last big defeat was, I'm not going to mention their name because it would be swearing, and you're a non-swearing football podcast. So therefore, I'll just call them the Blue Lot from down the wrong end of the Nen. And they trounced us in our derby match. And it was horrible to witness that. But it has happened a few times this season. Portsmouth have ram-raided us, basically, both times we've played them this season. You beat us heavily, of course. So it wasn't necessarily unexpected that would happen. Bit disappointing at times, but 9 times out of 10, well, every time that we've been beaten heavily, we've always just kind of had to hold our hands up and just go, look, we got beaten by a much better side than us. And I do think League One, especially this season, possibly last season as well. I mean, you'll know more about that than me, but it feels like there's the top six and then there's everybody else. And the fact that Stevenage, for example, have gate crashed that top six for a big portion of the season has been incredible to bear witness to, and fair play to them for managing it. They don't play the most attractive football, but it gets results, and it's continued to do so this season. So I've been very much sort of going, right, well, if we beat the teams that are around us and below us, then great. And then if we go and lose heavily to the likes of yourselves and Portsmouth, then it's not the end of the world, and they're not the games that are going to make or break our season, and they haven't done. We've had some terrific performances. Blackpool away back in November was a superb game for us. We played really, really well. We played counter-attacking football, and we basically just, hit them where it really hurt. And I remember speaking to a friend of mine that's a Blackpool fan, and he said after that game that, I'm amazed at how you came and played football at Bloomfield Road, and you nullified us in the right areas, and you stopped us from playing, and then you just hit us twice, completely, not necessarily out of the blue, because we were able to attack throughout the match, but the couple of times they were just sucker punches, and they were really just getting straight into it and hitting the teams where it hurts. I think our last win, if I'm right, was against Burton. Probably the most comfortable game of the whole season. We won 2-0, scored both times in the first half, and it was just a stroll throughout the rest of the game. Really comfortable, really confident display. We just kind of never really got out of second gear that game. We sort of just went and did the job, and it was wonderful to see. And that was the game or the win that probably saw us get to the point where we went, right, we're definitely safe now. There's no danger of any kind of battle at either end of the table anymore. And since then, we've maybe been a bit on the beach. It hasn't been as pleasing on the eye to watch. We haven't really managed to show the level of performance that we did earlier on in the season, which has been really disappointing from our side of things. We were talking about it on our pod this week, actually, that it would be the most Northampton thing in the world to do, is to have this run of, I think it's been 5 games where we've now been not great, and just go and beat you guys on Saturday. It would be the most Cobblers thing that we could possibly do. I'm not saying that I think that is going to be the case and that will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised, is I think what I'm saying. So yeah, overall, I'm really happy with the overall context of the season. A bit disappointed with the last sort of 5 games or so. We need to basically get our mentality back into play and remember that there is a difference between finishing 12th and 16th, essentially. And if we do that and we get back to playing football, like I know we can do, then we'll have a good run in for the rest of the season. I think we've really, out of the teams that are above us, we've got yourselves and then Barnsley on the last day of the season. Then everybody else that we play, we've got Port Vale, we've got Fleetwood, Reading, Carlisle, and then Exeter. So, I mean, it's a nice looking run in. Get you guys out of the way on Saturday, and then we should, on paper, pick up a number of points, which hopefully would see us finish top half, which would be absolutely lovely. Not that I'm really bothered, I'll be honest. It's one of those.
Yeah. I mean, your last 5 have been tricky. Look, I mean, a rejuvenated Charlton under Nathan Jones. Obviously, you mentioned the defeat up at Peterborough. Probably a disappointing result against Cambridge. Probably feel like it should be getting a result there, especially the form that they've been in recently. But then Blackpool and Wickham, they're tough games. They're tough games probably for anyone in this division. So as much as there is that feeling of we're safe, we're on the beach, and we can kind of look forward to League One football, next season, there probably has been some tricky games in there. And yeah, like you say, I think after this one, they get a little bit easier. And you've got every chance of keeping pace with those around you. I mean, it's incredible that you're on the same amount of points as the likes of Wycombe, as Bristol Rovers. As you said, a lot of people, probably myself as well, I'd admit it, probably thought that you'd be going down this season. Probably the first team you'd probably put in the relegation zone. So, yeah, it's been an incredible season.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing, like with the Cambridge game, for example, that was Gary Monk's first game in charge. It was the end of their tumultuous week after Neil Harris had left them for Millwall. And I think that there was a little bit of new manager bounce. But I mean, the game itself, we let them score so early on. It was really annoying. And it was a turgid first half from both sides. And I think had we had maybe another 10 minutes of added time at the end of the game, we'd have gone on and won it because we were far the better side in the second half. So there is an element there where I look at it, and it's nice hearing from the outside perspective, because we were really annoyed about that 2-0 defeat on Saturday to Wycombe, because it was the most 0-0 game that doesn't finish 0-0 that you will ever watch. It was two moments that basically cost us. The first goal was conceded because essentially our midfielder Sean McWilliams wasn't strong enough in the tackle to basically keep himself upright and make sure that he either shepherded the ball out of play for a throw or cleared it. And then the second one, if you've not seen the goals, our goalkeeper must think it's going out for a goal kick because he just leaves it. And at the last second, it's in the back of the net. And you're just thinking, oh my God, what have we done here? You know, I'm not saying that we were likely to score at the other end, but apart from those two chances, Wycombe didn't have anything either. So it's disappointing as opposed to being, oh, we're rubbish and we've lost all confidence in our abilities and things like that. It's just been little moments. And I think that's what worries me about Saturday, because you have got the players to really tear us apart. Wycombe, solid team, really good League One standard team, know what they're doing. They clearly knew what their job roles were individually and as a team. But there wasn't really anyone there that I felt they're going to really trouble us. Whereas basically, I mean, Mendes Lang scares the absolute living bejesus out of me. It's, you know, I am worried about the quality that you've got in the side, and I know exactly what they can go and do to a team like us, and we will have to be at our best, every single player giving us 9, 10 out of 10, and you guys are going to be needing to have 4, 5, 6 players just off it, and that will be realistically the only way that we'll manage to actually get 3 points out of it. If you guys aren't at the races, we've got a chance, but I don't know. I don't think that there's going to be a chance that there'll be enough of your lads not in it and not focused. So, yeah, I'm a little bit scared about Saturday, but also looking forward to it. There's an excitement element because these are the games that we wanted. This is what you get promoted for. So there's that side of things. There's two parts to it. I'm like really excited for the game and what it could be, but I'm also terrified by some of those players that you've got in your side. Absolutely terrified.
Yeah, well, you haven't got Dwight Gale to worry about because he was injured on Saturday. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we do at the top end of the pitch. I think we have got a couple of injuries, a couple of people that are nursing injuries ahead of the game on Saturday. So it will be interesting to see how we line up. But yeah, I think we've got, you know, an absolute arsenal of attacking players that can cause problems. But what I would say is that on occasions this year, we've not seen the best of them. And we have gone and struggled at certain grounds. I mean, away we seem to be better. But there has been, you know, the likes of Shrewsbury, the likes of Stevenage where we've struggled. So, yes, by no means I think we're coming into this looking at it and thinking, you know, it's going to be a 3-point game, because I think we need to kind of, you know, keep the momentum and keep respect to all those teams that we play. And you know, we will have to be at our best to get those points. And as you said, it would be quite like Cobblers to get a result on Saturday. It would probably be quite like Derby to beat Bolton and then come to Sixfields and lose 2-1 to a scrappy goal in the last moment or something like that. So that's what I'm scared about. I think we're talking about what things we're scared about here, Charles. But in terms of the season so far, then, if you were to single out a player that deserves the credit for how good this season has been, who would you say has to get the plaudits if you could only choose one?
Oh, it's easy. It's Mark Leonard. Every step of the way. He is just, he's an incredibly talented young lad. And he has been our focal point for the last 2 seasons. We've had him on loan from Brighton. He came to us last season. And then this season, we've managed to get him back for another year. Essentially, he had offers from elsewhere. I know Charlton wanted him. There were a couple of other teams as well. And Brighton really, really good in terms of the way that they deal with their loanees, or the players that they loan out, rather, is that they basically say, look, here's what's available. Here's who wants you. Where do you want to go? And it was down to the player to make the decision as to where they ended up. And, you know, credit to him. He clearly saw something in us, whether it was, well, I'm sure it's a mixture of all of these things, but, you know, John Brady's a fantastic coach. He was the youth team academy under 18s boss before he took the first team job. Before he was our first team manager, he had his own soccer school. He is a coach and he is very, very good at it. And he has brought, not every single player that he's brought in has developed under him. I think there's always going to be an element where some of them just don't work. But the vast majority have come in and by the time that they've either left or that there's been a season, done, you can see a real difference, a real improvement in how they are as a footballer. And Mark Leonard has just come on leaps and bounds. It helps when they've already got massive amounts of potential and massive quality already there that just needs unlocking. But that has happened with abundance with Mark Leonard. I mean, he's on the radar of championship teams for next season. I really hope that Brighton give him a chance with their first team squad. This is a lad that will undoubtedly be playing. I mean, he's Scottish, so he'll be playing for Scotland. He'll be in their first team squad at some point within the next few years. I'm certain of it. He will be in the Premier League. He's just a talent, and you can see that he is a level above the vast majority of the players that we've got in our side. But at the same time, having him there lifts everybody else, and everybody else is therefore a better player because of him. He brings out the best in them. You'll see him as either playing, we'd prefer to see him as a 10 in that attacking midfield role, being an advanced playmaker, really making us tick in attack. But you'll possibly see him, and I think this is where he played at Pride Park, as more of a 6 and sort of not holding, but just being that base of the midfield that will then look to make the passes. He'll noticeably, when we're having not necessarily an off day, but when we're struggling, he will go back to collect the ball off the centre backs and then look to play it around. And when we're struggling, he has to pass it sideways or backwards again, because there's just nothing in front of him that he can really pick out to go and get us on the front foot. And that's a frustration at times. You can see it in him. It's a frustration at times that he's having to just pass it back to a centre back or, out wide sideways instead of going forward. And it's just not quite working. But he's the focal point of everything we do. So as much as I hate to say this, it's the obvious thing. And, your coaching staff will know this already. So I'm not giving away any state secrets or anything. But you get him out of the game and you're more or less sorted, and you've nullified us as a team. It's one of those where he is just so good. But I mean, it's even the case of that there have been teams that have put 2-3 men on him, and he still will just go, like, you're not here, pal. It doesn't matter. I'm getting through that gap, whether you like it or not. He's an incredible talent. He will go really, really far in the years ahead. And Brighton are an incredibly lucky team to have him as their own. We've been incredibly fortunate getting 2 years out of him. It's been a wonder to watch him at times. He's cracking. I mean, I think it was February. He more or less had the goal of the month competition just between himself. He scored several crackers. One at Portsmouth, which was a consolation to make it 4-1. It was just brilliant. There's no other words for it. It was absolutely a tremendous finish. He's got it all. He really does.
Yeah. I think we've seen, this season and last season especially, that loan players can really make a difference. I mean, I look at Plymouth last season with the loan players that they had to get them promoted, and like you say there with Leonard, it seems that he's played a big part in getting you to that safety spot. And I think League One is a great league to see those loan players kind of flourish. That kind of 20 to maybe 24. Coming down from the Premier League, they've obviously had that education, they've had that coaching, and they can just get on the ball and play. And yes, it's very combative football at times, and they're probably going to get kicked, but actually it's all good for their growth as players. But credit to him for coming back 2 years on the bounce, because he probably could be a little bit closer to Brighton, I guess, or a bit closer to home. I don't know where he was born, but I always think there's something quite unique in the fact that he's decided to come back for 2 years on the bounce. Looking at the top end of the pitch, then obviously doing a bit of research, Hoskins is the man with the goals this year. Tell me a bit more about him.
Yeah, I mean, so Sam signed back in, I think it was 2014. Chris Wilder signed him. He was on trial in pre-season. I think he'd been at Yeovil before that. Young lad who was a bit of a utility player, to be honest, throughout his first maybe 5 or so years. Keith Curl, famously from a Cobblers perspective, played him at wing back, but then he also played Kevin Van Veen, who is a striker, out and out, nowhere else. He also stuck him at left wing back at one point. So it's not really necessarily a surprise that Sam would go and do a job there. He's one of those players that wears his heart on his sleeve and just effort. That's what he is all about, is effort. You know full well with Sam that you're going to get not always a performance, but he's always going to put a shift in. And I think last year he scored 22 goals and was only second behind Andy Cook in League Two for the top goal scoring charts. He won the PFA Player of the Year for League Two. He just always has been, I remember Keith Curl saying that he was the most natural finisher that we had at the football club. And quite a few fans laughed at that. But I think it was because quite often he would take 5 chances to score the goal, which would be at times annoying. But then last year, something clicked. I know at the beginning, in the summer, he had his first child and he signed a new contract. And I think that maybe just focused him. He's talked about it himself, how it kind of just grounded him and made him realise that football isn't the be all and end all, and that there is more to life, more important things in life for him than that. Not to say that he doesn't enjoy his job. He's not a Pascal Chimbonda that doesn't care about football or anything like that. But he just relaxed, and suddenly he was just scoring goals. And as I say, he was top goal scorer last season. He's been top goal scorer this season. The one criticism that I'd have of him is that I think with that, there's become a little bit of arrogance on the ball, not in his personality, but if he gets the ball and he's within 25 yards of the goal, he will be shooting. And there are times when you think, that's the wrong decision. There was a pass that was on there to get one of your other teammates in who would have had a much higher, possibility of scoring. But you don't score. You don't shoot. You don't score, and that's probably his mantra. And he's obviously got the free rein to go and do that. He's been off the boil of late. I mean, he had a bit of an injury over, I think, Christmas time. I think he picked it up. It was a hamstring, I think. And ever since then, he's not quite been as good. I know that there was an illness that went through the camp, and he definitely had it a few weeks back. He's now over that. I did think that, especially the game against Peterborough, he was really off the boil, but he wasn't the only one. There has been, John Brady has said this week in his pre-match presser that he is fit and he is over the illness. I'm hoping that means that he's match fit as well, because it was quite evident that I think he wasn't in the last couple of times that he's played. He will play on either sort of wing. We will tend to play with a front three. So you'll either have Louis Appere as your striker focal point, or it'll be Tyree Simpson. Both of them good at different things. Louis Appere, we've nicknamed him the Labrador on the podcast because he chases everything. He's great at closing down and pressing the opposition, and therefore will try and keep you in your half and try and keep you as close to your box as possible with the ball. Whereas Tyree Simpson, he's built, he is strong, but he's also fast. So slightly different, and it will depend on the day as to which way John Brady thinks will be the better way to go against you guys. I've got a feeling it will probably be Appere, but then you'll have Sam, and he'll probably be on either probably normally starts on the right, and so he'll be on the right, and then you'll have potentially either Kieran Bowie on the other side, or it'll be Mitch Pinnock. It will depend on who's fit. Pinnock was also a player that came down with that illness as well, so he's touch and go for the weekend. But he then may well go with Bowie there instead, who is another loanee that again came back for a second year this year from Fulham. He's shown leaps and bounds. I mean, he's may not play this weekend because he's been called up for a Scottish under-21s. It depends whether or not he'll play. I think they play on Thursday. So it will depend. I mean, I know last time for the international break, where we did end up playing the game, because actually I think this is the first one in ages that hasn't been postponed because they've changed the rules now. But I think the last time that he went away and where we did play on the Saturday, they played on the Thursday and he did come back and play. So that shows you his mentality and how much he wants to go and play. He's a terrific talent. I see him more as an out-and-out striker than a winger that would cut in from the left. The one thing with him, though, is that he's a bit of a wind-up merchant. He's the kind of guy that will, go into a challenge with a player. He won't fake injury or anything like that, but he will look to win free kicks. And there are times, and there have been times this season, where he's won cheap free kicks, very cheap, and he's then looked up at the crowd with that big beaming smile as if to sort of say, got him, love it. And then loves a bit of wind-up with his opposite man, loves it with the opposition crowd as well. He scored the first goal at Blackpool, and his initial reaction was to go straight in front of the Blackpool home end and, Jude Bellingham arms in the air style, this is me, I'm here kind of celebration. He loves a bit of that. So if he's fit, then or if he's available, I should say, then he will no doubt play. It's a question of whether he'll be on the wing or whether that'll be Pinnock. If he's not, then he possibly will end up playing in with a front two. They might go with Appere and Bowie up front together, or one of them in the 10, and then that'll mean Leonard will be further back.
Yep.
We try and be nice and free-flowing with that front four, and they'll quite often swap positions and mix it up a bit just to keep you on your toes. It's whether or not you'll allow us to have any of the ball in that area of the pitch. That's going to be the key. If you dominate in that third of the pitch, then it will be very hard for us to really get anything out of those players, because it will just be difficult. I know Bowie will be up for a fight in a good way, not in a fisticuffs way. He'll love the challenge and the battle, but it's whether or not we can then get the others that are more technical into the game.
Yeah. And where do you think Derby win this game? Is there any weaknesses that you think Derby could exploit? I mean, coming off the back of a set piece goal last time out, how do you defend set pieces? Or is there an Achilles heel to this Northampton team?
I think our Achilles heel, there's an obvious place, which is our left back position. Patrick Brough is injured. I can't remember what he's done. He's done his oblique muscle, which, there you go. He didn't play on Saturday against Wycombe, and he was deputised by Manny Monthe, who is a League Two centre back. That is what he is. We love him, but not because he's brilliantly and technically gifted footballer. We love him because essentially he's probably playing above his level, but he does that really, gritty stuff really quite well. He's got very gangly legs, so whenever he gets the ball, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh God, he's going to slip up here. Is something's going to happen?" And then he always manages to control it. Very rarely makes a mistake, which is great. Even if Patrick Brough is over his injury, then he's still the major weakness, or that is the area of the pitch that's a major weakness. That's where we get targeted every week in, week out. The sides come down our left hand and we struggle. And that will be probably where you guys will target us the most. I mean, in terms of what's going to, what else it is, it's just some of those players, some of those names will just terrorize us, I'm sure. I don't want to be harsh to us, because it would be very, very unfair. And if John Brady ever listened, then he'd probably send me a message saying, "What the hell are you saying about this? Our players can match them." And of course, on our day that we can, but we've got to be realistic and of where we are, and therefore it's going to be a very tough game. If Mendes Lang is on form and in that game, I might have to close my eyes every time he gets on the ball. It might be that kind of game. You mentioned set pieces. We have been a bit fragile at times, mostly because of the fact that we've had quite a lot of injuries in our defensive setup, and so it doesn't feel like we've ever been settled for the season with a back four or back five, depending on the formation that we go with. It feels like every week there's a change and there's something different, and therefore, because of that, there are times when we struggle. The goal that we conceded against Cambridge, Liam Moore, who'd not played a game of football for something like maybe a year, 2 years maybe, he'd come in to play his first, I think he managed 90 minutes, the full 90 minutes. And he held his hands up and said it was his fault. He basically stepped across the ball instead of going towards the man. And so he left the man free and he tucked it in. It was an easy finish. And again, it was rustiness. So that's going to be where we are potentially fragile, is depending on who's fit and who's playing and how much of a cohesion that they've all got with each other and an understanding. If we've got John Guthrie and Sam Sherring as our main centre-back pairing, then we should be fairly secure. But then the issue is who's on the right, who's on the left. It becomes a big problem elsewhere. So it feels like every time we get somebody back fit, we lose somebody else. And it's really, really disruptive to us, and has been all season. And last season was awful for injuries. So we're not quite as bad as last year, I don't think. But it's just not been... we've not been able to just go out and put the same 11 out for more than maybe 2 games in a row. And I think we've only maybe even done that once or twice this season. So that's where we, unfortunately, will struggle, I think.
Yeah, well, it's some really good information there, Charles, on obviously how you've set up this season, how you're obviously going to set up on Saturday as well. And we're all looking forward to the Michael Jacobs derby. We talked about that off air. Any Derby fans listening, if you don't know who Michael Jacobs is, go ask someone maybe 5 or 10 years older than yourself, and they'll let you know the blast from the past. But my final question, Charles, is the big one. What's your prediction for the game?
It's a really tough one, because normally I go quite bravado when I get asked this question, but because it's Derby and you're obviously going for automatic promotion. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like you've kind of gone about it on the quiet. You were very noisy at the beginning of the season because obviously you weren't meeting the expectation that you had, despite being still sort of in the playoff hunt. But since you've kind of got up into second place, it's almost like, it's strange to say it, but it's almost been under the radar just because of the fact that you had all that noise at the start of the season where you weren't happy and that, you're not in the place that you're expecting the team to be. And now you're there. It's like, well, this is just where we're meant to be. I'm not going to really say anything else about this. I'm not going to be noisy about it because this is what our par is. So it's a tough one. Like I said to you off air, it feels like League One, there's two divisions. There's the top six and then there's everybody else. So it's going to be a really tough game. I would love to go and say, we'll win this game and we'll win it. And if we do win it, we'll win it by a single goal, maybe 2-1. The one stat that is going to be very much in your favour is that we have not come from behind to win a game all season. We've come from behind to pick up a point, but never win the game. I think my most positive, realistic prediction would be a 1-1 draw.
Okay, and who would be your goal scorer?
Goal scorer. Oh. I'd love it to be Tyree Simpson. If he starts, I love that man. He's brilliant. He's had a bit of a turmoil start with us. He's on loan from Huddersfield and he didn't really show us anything in the first part of the season. And then for some reason, around about sort of December, he had a bit of a spell out of the team. And I think he got given a pep talk and told, look, you've got to work. You can't just stand there and wait for the ball. And since then, he's been a different player. And I'd love him to score it. Our most likely place that will get a goal will either be Hoskins or Bowie, probably. Although recently, John Guthrie has scored a couple, 2 out of his last 3, both from corners or a free kick. So maybe it'll be one of those. I mean, I'm very much just hoping it's not a 4-0 defeat and a whitewash. Not that I don't think we could complain if it was. You're a very good side. Very jealous.
Yeah, I think my prediction is that I looked at it on Saturday when Dwight Gale went off injured, and I was sat looking at the team, and I was thinking, where's the goal going to come from? And it came from quite an unlikely source in Kane Wilson off the bench. My thinking is it's not going to be another 4-0 game. I think it's probably going to be a bit tighter. I think it's probably going to be maybe a 1-0, 2-0 Derby victory. I think we are quite solid at the back. And I think actually the performance against Bolton will give, that back line loads of confidence. So I'd imagine that they'll be going for another clean sheet, but I'd bet that they'd go and do that. So I think it's going to be a couple. It's not going to be as convincing, in my opinion, as the reverse fixture. But I do think we come into it with a lot of confidence from that Bolton game. So that's going to be my prediction. But Charles, thanks so much for joining us today. I believe I'm coming on your podcast tomorrow, so we're actually doing the reverse tomorrow as well, which is good. Excited to come and speak to you guys. If you have enjoyed this, go rate us 5-star wherever you get your podcasts from. We'll be back on Sunday to review the Northampton game. We hope to see you there. Charles, just left for me to say thanks so much for joining us.
No, thanks very much for having me, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.